Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
It is expensive to live in San Diego County, and housing is one of the biggest reasons why. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. A new report shows a lot of families don't make anywhere near enough money to enjoy what it calls a decent standard of living. KPBS reporter John Carroll breaks it down for us.
When you think about the high cost of living here, the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of us is housing costs. There's actually a bit of good news on that front, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, the report from United Way of California. They call it the real cost measure. The headline? A family of 4 in San Diego County would need to bring in upwards of $110,000 a year to live here without struggling. The report finds that in this county, 36% of households fall short of that mark. It's even worse in Imperial County, where 44% of households aren't making enough to live decently.
It's clear that the federal poverty guidelines that are used nationwide really don't take into account what it really costs to live in California.
United Way of San Diego County President and CEO Nancy Sasaki says the real cost report measures a wide range of costs to come to a much more realistic number.
And include things like housing, food, childcare, health care, transportation, and some of these basic needs.
Now to the costs of housing, specifically rent. This spot recently ran on cable TV systems throughout the state.
The rent is too damn high.
The spot ends with a question for the governor.
Governor Newsom, what are you doing to lower my rent?
The ad from a group calling itself Justice for Renters, supported by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, is seeking the governor's support, or at least not his opposition, to a measure on next November's ballot that would allow municipalities throughout the state more power to enact rent control. It's opposed by the Southern California Rental Housing Association.
So it really does, in many ways, come down to supply and demand. And we really just have to work to kind of make sure that we're not encouraging policies that increase rents, that increase housing costs, and make sure that we keep adding the housing that we need.
And now to that good news. The latest figures from apartmentlist.com show rents here are actually down just over 4% from their summer peak. But the United Way says there need to be changes in policy to really make an impact.
How can we help single mothers who are a part of those disproportionately affected groups, households of colors, households with young children?
More details can be found in the report at unitedwayca.org. The finer points of why it costs so much to live in this beautiful corner of the world. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Cities and counties can now apply for a slice of nearly $300 million to clean up encampments around California. Governor Gavin Newsom says the grant program requires local governments to provide housing for people living in large tent encampments before shutting them down. Newsom's announcement comes days before he is scheduled to face Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in the debate stage this Thursday. San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria is giving more details for the next phase in the Bridge to Home initiative, and that includes the locations for 5 affordable housing developments. Locations will include Hillcrest, City Heights, Palm City, Pacific Beach, and Claremont. These locations would add 400 total housing units. About a quarter of those would be set aside for those experiencing homelessness. Residents of a downtown homeless shelter are being tested this week following a tuberculosis exposure. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says health officials won't know if more people are sick until the testing is completed.
We were notified yesterday about it.
Residents at the city's Golden Hall shelter, operated by the nonprofit Father Joe's Villages, say they received flyers in their bunks about the TB exposure. County health officials say the exposure happened during most of September, and a letter to residents says Health and Human Services Agency believes your personal risk of acquiring TB from this exposure to be low, but cannot exclude the possibility that you may have become infected with tuberculosis.
We were all concerned last night about it, and we're all looking around, like who has TB, and we're not that concerned. We don't feel that concerned because not a lot of people here are sick.
Residents tell me a meeting was held on Monday to discuss the exposure and to let residents know TB testing is scheduled for Tuesday. In a statement, the medical director of Father Joe's Villages says the health and safety of our staff, volunteers, and clients is paramount.
I think they're handling it as best as they can and as professional as they can.
Tuberculosis is a bacterial infection that typically impacts the lungs, and it can be deadly if left untreated. The county health department is leading mitigation efforts.
So compared to a household of 2 or 4 or 8 people, we're talking about a household that has several hundred people, and so just at the scale of the response that's needed is very different.
County health officials know of at least one case, and while they haven't gotten reports of any others, they won't know for sure until testing is completed. Those who are deemed close contacts are being prioritized.
But that said, we're going to make sure that testing is available to all residents of Golden Hall, even those who may not have been there in September, because we know that people experiencing homelessness are disproportionately impacted by tuberculosis.
The CDC says not everyone infected with TB becomes sick. Some do right away, but there's another condition called latent TB, where people can become sick at a later time. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Well, we do have relatively quiet weather right now, but things are going to become more active into Wednesday night as well, with some rain showers, a bit of a cool down, and a breeze as well. But in the meantime, tonight we'll drop down to around 50. The clouds will increase in the city. 45 Borrego Springs, Ramona drop to around 38 degrees. And you can see this is a relatively weak storm system drifting southeast near the California coast, but we'll see some scattered showers. We'll talk more about this with future radar in just a moment.
The United Nations Climate Conference, called COP28, begins on Thursday in Dubai. San Diego's Scripps Institution of Oceanography will be there. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge says they want to highlight the ocean's role in climate change and introduce the next generation of climate scientists.
Our people, the world, the planet, needs our actions now.
The UN Climate Conference is a global meeting of politicians and scientists that has a strong bearing on the fight against global warming. It's where the Paris Agreement was adopted in 2015. This year, Scripps Oceanography will co-host the Ocean Pavilion at the conference to show the huge role the ocean plays in the battle over rising temperatures.
Treating the ocean as being as important as the land is really, really important. It is the base of the ecosystem.
Professor Lynn Talley will be attending her second UN climate conference. She points out the ocean absorbs 90% of the extra heat generated by global warming and 30% of the excess carbon dioxide.
That the ocean provides a huge service in absorbing so much heat and so much of the excess carbon dioxide, but those have very negative impacts on the ocean ecosystems. And so we can't just rely on the ocean to take care of the problem.
UC San Diego has a total delegation of 30 people attending COP28, and the people going to Dubai won't just be faculty members. Mitchell Chandler is a PhD candidate at Scripps Oceanography. He comes from New Zealand, where he says the warming of the ocean is causing marine heat waves,
which then influences like land terrestrial heat waves. You can have more extreme temperature or drought, or even like we've recently had some tropical storms or like hurricanes that have extended out of the tropics and caused a lot of damage to the North Island of New Zealand.
Chandler studies ocean currents at Scripps Oceanography. He says he's excited to meet with policymakers to talk about how global warming is affecting island nations like his. He says previous generations have been too slow to act.
It's definitely frustrating seeing how slow and resistant to change a lot of people, places, companies, countries are, but there's also optimism there, right?
He says today there is a global will to make changes. Tally agrees.
I'm feeling energized to go to this meeting, and because there's so much bubbling about finally recognizing in a broad sense that climate change is here.
COP28, the UN Climate Conference, runs from November 30th to December 12th in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
An unannounced visit to 5 Customs and Border Protection facilities earlier this year is providing insight into the conditions for migrants inside. The Inspector General's visit happened in May when thousands of migrants were camped out waiting for their asylum claims to be processed. The report shows all 5 facilities held detainees longer than 72 hours, which violates the national standard. The largest facility in San Diego was at 171% capacity at the time. The report also found that several facilities had issues with record keeping as well as providing food, water, and medical care.
It's unacceptable because what that points to is that there have been years and years of so much resources going to enforcement and not enough to how we process people.
In the report, the CBP said they already took steps to correct the issues. The Inspector General considers the issues resolved. The CBP has 30 days to submit a formal closeout letter. A series of cyber attacks in cities across the U.S. have targeted critical systems like public utilities and health care. Tri-City Medical Center in Oceanside recently fell victim to hackers. Laura Aguirre has more on the recent attacks and who authorities believe may be behind them.
I'm surprised, but I'm not shocked. I mean, we've seen attacks from nation-state adversaries on a lot of our infrastructure.
Pennsylvania Representative Chris DeLuzio reacting to one of the nation's latest critical system cyber attacks on an out-of-the-way municipal water authority in his state, in the city of Aliquippa, about 35 minutes northwest of Pittsburgh. Local officials say an automated control system manufactured by the Israeli-based company Unitronics shut down Friday. When it was rebooted, a message appeared on a monitor screen saying,
"Our system had been hacked by legal right from the cyber avengers, down with Israel."
The Department of Homeland Security is now investigating the attack by the self-proclaimed cyber avengers. Federal officials say it's a pro-Iran anti-Israeli group that has claimed several similar attacks on X, formerly Twitter. Aliquippa authorities confirmed that no customers lost water service as workers were able to operate the affected system manually. But it's one of several U.S. infrastructure alarm bells in recent days. Since Thanksgiving Day, several hospitals in East Texas and New Jersey have been forced to scale back patient care after separate suspected ransomware attacks crippled critical technology systems. Authorities in both states are working with federal investigators to find out what happened and resume full operations.
We've got to make sure we're giving local governments and state governments the means to protect themselves against bad actors who are sophisticated, countries like Iran, China, North Korea.
I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
Over the last 9 months, cyber attacks have also forced ambulances to be diverted from hospitals in Connecticut, Florida, Idaho, and Pennsylvania. Today, the San Diego County Registrar of Voters released the final results of the November 7th special election. Monica Montgomery Stepp beat out Amy Reichert for the District 4 seat on the San Diego County Board of Supervisors with 61% of the vote. The race for Chula Vista Attorney is headed to a runoff in March. It'll be between Marco Verdugo and former City Attorney Bart Messfield. And voters overwhelmingly voted to pass measures to allow Fallbrook and Rainbow communities to detach from the San Diego County Water Authority. The House of Representatives returned to Washington today with a big to-do list. Republicans continue to face challenges as they lead with a very slim majority. And as Julia Benbrook reports, that majority could get even smaller.
Members of the House of Representatives are back on Capitol Hill with important agenda items to address: aid to Israel, the annual defense policy bill, and multiple government funding bills.
We're optimistic that we'll be able to get those negotiated and done in time so that we will not be facing a government shutdown.
But House Republicans face unique challenges as they lead with a very slim majority.
When you only have 3 or 4 votes to spare and a lot of people want a lot of different things, there's just simply no compromise to be had to keep the funding open with just Republican votes.
And the small majority could get even smaller. Congressman George Santos, a Republican from New York, is facing possible expulsion.
What that does do is complicate the math for Republicans, right? And especially Speaker Johnson, where you remove a reliably conservative vote for all of these things that we've talked about that Republicans want to pass, and you create a vacancy when you can't afford to have any votes missing.
A bipartisan House Ethics Committee released a scathing report earlier this month, finding evidence that he broke federal laws, stole from his campaign, and delivered a, quote, constant series of lies to get elected. Santos denounced the investigation, calling the report biased. But after its release, he announced he won't run again in 2024. Whether Congress votes to expel Santos or he remains in Congress for now, his swing district seat will be up for grabs at some point, and both Republicans and Democrats will be looking to claim it. In Washington, Julia Benbrook.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, diplomats push for another extension of the temporary truce in the Middle East. Coming up at 6 on Arizona PBS.
The SDSU Aztecs could introduce their next football coach as early as tomorrow. Sean Lewis will take the job vacated by Brady Hoke, according to a person with knowledge of the situation. There has been no formal announcement. Lewis was most recently part of the coaching staff at Colorado. The Aztecs just wrapped up a disappointing 4-win season and will not play in a bowl game this year. Today is Giving Tuesday. It's a big booster for organizations that rely on the spirit of the season to drive end-of-the-year donations. A number of charities are encouraging online donations, and scammers are ready to take advantage. Karen Kafa is in Washington with what to know this holiday season.
Giving Tuesday is a chance to kickstart a warm season of generosity and helping others. But even with charitable donations, the typical rules of online diligence still should apply. And experts say consumers should take the extra steps to protect their finances, their personal information, and their donations all season long. Amid the bustle of holiday shopping and spending, it's also a good time of year to give back. Unfortunately, scammers will deploy common tricks to take advantage of the busy season.
There's so many things that we interact with online and things that we do online, and that goes for both work and personal life, that, there are a lot of ways to get people to act.
Hank Schless of cybersecurity company Lookout says phishing scams, emails or text messages encouraging a recipient to follow a link to a fake website that looks like the real deal can prompt a consumer to give away critical information like logins and passwords.
Once they steal that, they'll go and basically, they have these programs that can automatically try your credentials across thousands of other websites, including, banking websites and things like that.
As Americans make end-of-year online donations to support causes and groups, the Federal Trade Commission warns scammers often put pressure on consumers to donate right away, often using the name of a group that seems legitimate to cause confusion. Before giving, seek out websites that evaluate charities like the Better Business Bureau's give.org, or check a charity's standing with the IRS, and use a credit card or check for donations. The FTC says asking for cash or gift cards can be signs of a scam. Last year, according to GivingTuesday.org, 37 million people participated in the day by volunteering or making a donation, and donations totaled more than $3.1 billion. A big boost to start the season of giving. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
The San Diego Humane Society hopes to tap into the generosity of Giving Tuesday. The organization says it has a record 757 dogs in its care, and its shelter has been operating above 150% capacity the entire year. The Humane Society also says it's seen a 20% increase in lost pets not retrieved by their owners. The GEM Project pledged to double donations made today up to $50,000. You can visit sthumane.org/GT if you would like to donate. A veterinarian based in Los Angeles is helping the companion animals of people living on Skid Row. Dr. Quan Stewart is known as the Street Vet. For nearly 12 years, he's been providing free medical care for the pets of people experiencing homelessness. And yesterday, he opened up a first-of-its-kind food pantry with the help of his nonprofit Project Street Vet.
I've stocked it with the same stuff I'd feed my own dog. The pets I meet in the streets deserve no less. Doing this kind of work that I know is making an impact in someone's life has been very special to me.
The dog food pantry is located at the Skid Row Community Refresh Spot. Dr. Stewart says he plans to potentially open up a similar pantry right here in San Diego.
We're getting into an active weather pattern, but this one should be pretty easy to manage. Sometimes when we get into rain or wind in Southern California, we go from nothing to really heavy activity, and that can lead to some flooding and so forth. This is going to be some pretty easy to deal with light rain shower activity over the next day or so. Turning cooler, becoming breezy, and rain showers will return. We can get more specific with Futurecast in just a moment, but you can see that we're dealing with dry air holding firm across the interior, but not for us near the coast. This storm system is pretty tame. It's a weak one, and it will be just silently drifting through parts of the southwest. But before that happens, it will paint a stripe of some showers into the area. And you can see Futurecast is going to show initially some pretty pesky showers near the Bay Area and up near the Muir Woods. And some of these showers could be a little bit heavier a little farther south, too. But by the time this system impacts us here in Southern California, the showers are going to be slim. And you can see the Futurecast is really unable to get us into the yellows on the color scale. We're staying in the greens, implying light to occasionally maybe a brief moderate burst of rain, but nothing too terribly heavy. Tomorrow will be a wetter day, though, so here we go into Oceanside and San Diego. Chula Vista temps in the mid-60s, so a little cooler, a lot cloudier, and there will be some showers here and there. Farther to the east, we're less inclined to see rain. It'll be just kind of a cooler time. You'll see some clouds out there mixed with some sunshine for many of us into the interior. So as we look at the 5-day forecast for the coast, there are your afternoon showers Wednesday, lingering sprinkles or showers into Thursday. Then we're going to transition to a drier time Friday, Saturday, and a beautiful, beautiful weekend. Temperatures back up to 67 Saturday, 70 Sunday. Looks like a winning weekend forecast here. Inland areas, again, if you're within maybe a few dozen miles of the coastline, you'll see some of the showers, cooler weather as well. Spotty showers linger into Thursday, maybe drizzle for a few folks, and then we dry back out and we warm up nicely into Sunday's forecast of 74 with some of that sunshine as well. For the mountains, we're probably going to stay dry here. We will be dealing with a breeze, though, and it's nippy. Highs in the upper 30s for a few days, rebounding into the low 40s. And for the deserts here, we're also going to stay mainly dry. By the time this low-pressure system drifts east, we might see a sprinkle Thursday night or Friday, but it won't last long. And a nice weekend for us into the deserts. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
Kids in Choyas View spent part of the day putting their wish list together for Santa. Second graders at Choyas Mead Elementary are taking part in the Operation Santa program. The U.S. Postal Service scans and posts letters to Santa with some personal details removed. Those who want to fulfill a wish can read through the letters and decide to participate.
If you're in possibilities of adopting a letter, the last day to view and adopt a letter as well as shipping would be December 18th. So make sure that if you can adopt, please go ahead and visit us before those deadlines.
And that website is USPSOperationSanta.com. The deadline to submit a letter is December 11th. Operation Santa is all digital these days, but the tradition goes back more than 100 years. And for those looking for a post-holiday escape, Disneyland announced another ticket discount for SoCal residents. And starting December 5th, Southern California residents can purchase tickets as low as $75 per day. Those tickets will be valid between January 2nd and June 2nd of next year. And proof of residency is required for purchase. A canoe that has sailed around the world is docked in San Diego. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson climbed aboard to learn how the crew is taking back the ancient Polynesian voyaging tradition.
Hidden behind ships at the Maritime Museum is a small double canoe lashed together with 6 miles of cords, the hokulea. It's modeled after ancient Polynesian vessels.
When we were young, there were no canoes like this. They were just stories. So we take the knot out.
That's Captain Bruce Blankenfeld.
Voila.
He sailed the boat for over 40 years.
All of this was created at a time in Hawaii when the Hawaiian culture was still at a low point. You know, the Hawaiian culture had just been relegated to a past tense.
It was brought out of history books and back onto waves during what became known as the Hawaiian Renaissance in the 1970s. Voyaging again became a way of recapturing a tradition erased by colonizers.
When all of us who had been educated in a Western model had thought about learning 200 stars and guiding a canoe across, a vast expanse of 2,500 miles, guided by the stars, the ocean swells, the seabirds, and everything like that. I mean, we basically looked at each other and said, yeah, I don't think so. It was like something in our minds so impossible.
But 200,000 miles later, they're still going. The crew navigates using the same methods as their ancestors, who crossed the ocean centuries before Columbus. San Diego is their last stop before returning to show aloha to those still recovering from the fires in Maui. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Black women average more student debt than other groups, and gender and racial wage gaps often make it harder to pay off of their loans. NPR's Morning Edition has the story of one woman's journey out of debt. And KPBS Midday Edition is discussing some of the latest weight loss trends, including injectable medications like Ozempic. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.